Good morning, good afternoon, ladies, wherever you're coming in from, and welcome to In Search of Prosperity Sisterhood. This morning, we are going to end up someplace with love and peace and prosperity. But we're going to start with maybe some bigger picture or smaller picture, more pinned in things. So as things come up for you, or you have a question, or you're just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, or some words just chime in for you, throw them in the chat, raise your hand. There might be a spot where I can stop and bring you in, or we can save those in the chat for our live discussion later on. So however that works, I just go with the flow, as you know. So welcome. So this morning, I have two words that I want to give you and leave you with. And the first one is conviction. So when we hear the word conviction, we think about knowing what we stand for. That's what I wrote down anyway in my notes. If that triggered some other words for you, throw them in the chat. But the word conviction to me means knowing what you stand for and then backing it up with standing firm, holding the line, right? Conviction. One thing I learned in a self-development talk, podcast, seminar, something, was writing a list of the things that you believe. What are you convicted in? What could it be? One list, unwavering. I love that word. Yes, conviction is unwavering. In the example of writing a list of what you believe, I'm just going back to like that experience in that seminar of some kind. They said, I believe in Santa Claus. Right? Like, what does that mean to you? Because you believe different things than other people, and that's okay. The key is to stand firm in that. And if you're wishy-washy, maybe it's not a belief. Maybe it's something that you want to learn more about. A while back, we talked about your people and who your people are that are going to help you get to that next thing. So sometimes if we're writing that list and we're like, you know what, I don't know if I believe that. Who could I ask? Who has a better understanding in that world or can shoot me in the right direction of what that looks like in a bigger picture than me and my box? So the second word I'm bringing today, I have a third one, but we'll bring that later. Second word is vision. Where do you want it to take you? And then also knowing that you'll get there. Taking that vision and adding conviction to it, you just know you're going to get there. All the naysayers can shut up. And then a while back, we worked through our goals, but they always come up, as they should. But goals are there for your tracking and your planning and your stumbling blocks. And your beliefs and values are there to back you up. They don't necessarily hold you up when things go south or you trip on something within your plan, right? On that path. But I don't know, once I say that, I'm like, oh, they are though. They do hold you up when everything else might just get stripped away. Those beliefs and values, yeah, they hold you up, they back you up. And it could be like when you go into that, maybe a negative cycle in your head. I don't know, I go back to maybe that example of I believe in Santa Claus, right? Well, what does that mean? Right? Like, what's the conviction behind that? Um, how do you prove it? Right? You prove it through your actions and your motion, the movement that you create, the momentum. And then when you know these things about yourself and about what you have in store, like I said, nobody can talk you down or talk you out of it. It's written on your soul, right? It's etched into whatever that is. So I wanted to share with you ladies, being a lady, I took a job 250 miles away a few years ago in the oil field. A woman. Okay. I wasn't working in the oil field physically, like doing the manual labor on the rigs or whatever, but I entered into that economy as a salesperson. And I got ridiculed. And I reflected on this quite a bit this weekend about how you have that. There's two ways you can go with this. And if you don't have conviction and vision, when you go into something, a new opportunity like I did, it could turn into just a means to an end. Like most people going into the oil field, that's what it is. It's the answer of more money and blah, blah, blah. And we're just going to do it until the oil field shuts down again, because it does every few years, right? It ebbs and flows. If you're familiar with that culture slash, I used another word earlier, I can't remember it. Maybe someone can. But so many people entering into that culture use it or see it as that means to an end. I'll go with it until the door gets slammed. Well, that's not really a plan. That doesn't include conviction and vision. Well, and see, okay, so Phyllis, here's a correction maybe for you. It wasn't, I went into that culture, into that city, but I wasn't in a non-traditional role. I wasn't working for an oil company, but I had left my home to go to a town, a boom town, to do a job. And that job was selling laundry contracts to restaurants, uniform wearers of any kind, any industry, that kind of thing. And so leaving my environment to go do something, instantly, so many people, because they're in that mindset of the oil boom and bust, right? And so they're going at it with, I'm going to go with it until it slams the door in my face, right? But that's not where I was coming from. I was going at it with a timeline, with money goals, with development goals for myself. And I had an endpoint and I knew what I was going to do afterwards. So when I went in there, again, they're thinking, you're just like going in to see when the door is going to get slammed in your face, right? On this economy, right? And they ridiculed me because I left my husband. Whereas all these husbands had left their wives to go to the oil field and do their thing and blah, 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 right? Until the door gets slammed in their face by the boom or the bust, right? And so I'm a woman going into this economy And so many people like, oh, so you and your husband not doing so good, or like, what's your plan here? Or what do you mean you're just going to leave in 2 years? Um, and yet I had a plan. And so convincing them of that, or just brushing them off, a little bit of both, right? Maybe repeating myself, sticking to that script of who I was, what I was doing there, and how I was going to get out, right? Which is not something they were used to hearing. Yes, that quick fix, that no plan. They didn't get it. And so having my conviction and my vision in front of me, knowing what I was going to do next, right? Like, this is that stepping stone. I'm not going to sit here until someone else tells me different, right? I'm not just going to see where it takes me. I have a plan. And that's what I did. And even my sister was like, "Why are you leaving your husband?" And I'm like, "Wait a second, guys. I'm only leaving him from Monday to Thursday. Like, I'm not leaving him completely, right? Like, he's got food and I'm coming home to him, right? Like, the idea of going into something with not knowing how you're gonna get out or move through, that's that vision and conviction that you need to get to the other side and to the next goal and to the next thing. And so all those people, like, I entered into this economy of people who were like, wait, what? What are you doing? And so for the most part, I just let them believe that my husband moved there with me. They didn't need to know where my husband was. And so most of them didn't know that my husband didn't live in Wyoming with me. I live in South Dakota, right? And yet I was only there 3.5 days a week. And I stuck to that script. I stuck to that vision and that plan and that goal and that conviction of what was next for me and my family. And so all those naysayers, all those questions, they can just bounce off of you. You just go back to that script. You just go back to, well, this is what I'm doing, because so that we've used those words a little bit this year. I'm doing this so that XYZ. And some of them would get it, and some of them would be like, but you left your husband. Like, they just couldn't get it out of their head, right? And that's okay, because I had vision and conviction and commitment to my husband. Like, we had a plan. It wasn't just my plan, right? But when you can know and understand where you're coming from, you can, I when you know and understand where you're coming from, you can conquer anything. You can answer any of those questions. You can get up and do it again the next day. And that, to me, that is a form of self-love. Like, giving yourself that gift of your vision and your conviction so you can love and understand yourself. Because some days, I'll tell you, some days that felt like the craziest thing I've ever done. And some days when I tell that story, or a story about that time, they're just, it sounds crazy. Because if you just take that pinhole vision or view of that, it does. And that's fine. And it goes back to the entire vision that you hold, because really nobody else holds that. So then when somebody shares something with you that they're doing, you can give them love and compassion and understanding in some small way. You're not going to fully understand it ever. One person I follow, and I think I've shared him before, John Deloney. He's a talk show host. He's a Dave Ramsey personality, and like one of the people that work for Dave Ramsey. And he gets calls of all sorts. And one thing he taught me was using the words, "I love that for you." You may not understand it. You may have so many questions you don't know where to start. But when you're dealing with someone else and you don't get it because you don't have to, using the words, "I love that for you." That sounds awesome for you. And then on the compassion side, even though you don't understand it, maybe it sounds awesome to you, but it's horrible for them. "I hate that for you." Just really enjoyed that teaching from John Deloney. Just using those words. Like, I think it makes me, from learning this from him, I think it makes me a better friend. Because sometimes they don't come to you for advice. They don't want to hear what you would do, right? "I love that," or "I hate that for you." Just that extra level of compassion on either direction of that. And I think it comes down to we need to voice and share and speak life into and of our visions and convictions. We can lean on scripts. Okay, I mentioned scripts earlier, right? Like, I can still say the script I said in Wyoming to all the people that I was prospecting for that sales career. I can still recite that script. Could I go over there and do it tomorrow? Probably. Like, because I said it so much. Because we had a vision and we worked towards something. And then me as a salesperson, same thing. I had goals, I had vision, I had things I had to do, right? So leaning on a script, bullet points, keywords, whatever that is. Like, it doesn't have to be word for word, but it's those, I always use like bullet points or keywords. It's those little things that can trigger you into completing that sentence, right? Setting a series of goals, a series of goals. What's next? Okay, if you do this, what's next? So it's like those, makes me think of like, okay, apparently I know songs from the 80s that nobody else knows from the 80s because my parents were one-hit wonder band gurus or something. I don't know. And I was born in the wrong time. I know these things. I am seeing laughing, and that's okay. I know. But it makes me think of one-hit wonder bands. Like, they made it to the top. And then what? They disappeared. They didn't do crap. They made some other great music, or they didn't, right? Like, nobody knows. Now we have the internet, so we can figure out more about what happened to the headpins from the 80s, but that's another day. So what's the next goal? So in business, I think about like the one-hit wonder, right? So you make it to the top. Well, apparently that wasn't your top, is what I'm getting at, right? So like, if your goal is to make $100,000 this year, it's just a nice, easy round number, right? And in April, you have an event that does 100 grand. What's next? Right? You have three $10,000 days. What's next? You paid off that debt. What's next? Having that series of goals, knowing that, okay, once I get this, then I do that. Things change, right? So, like, sometimes the order of things isn't always the same. So, having that series and having some flexibility, well, little asterisks there, right? Like, have some flexibility, but having a series of goals. Then the list I mentioned, I'm a list girl, so this isn't the first list you'll ever write for yourself for me. Okay. Um, Write a list of your beliefs or your family values, not your rules, your values or beliefs, right? Like sometimes those words just have to be different for us to write the list we need to write. Write that list of beliefs or values. And then lastly, you've kind of figured out as you go through this, you've kind of figured out like who you are and what you do, right? Sometimes, again, we need to be flexible. We need to challenge ourselves. So that's the idea of, well, we've always done it this way. Or A is always before B. So sometimes challenging yourself is just scrambling it, right? Shuffling the deck. I'm I'm a Scorpio, so I like to stack the deck. so so shuffling the deck is hard for me, but sometimes that's what you need to pull up the card that gets you in motion, right? Um Makes me think of like that series of goals. Well, maybe you just need to shuffle them. Maybe that's why it's so hard to get this first one done because it wasn't supposed to be the first one. And yet everything in your being was like, this must go first. When really there's no rules. And lastly, that was my little list of things for you ladies to do or implement. I want to give you this. When it comes to knowing and loving and understanding yourself, that idea of what other people are doing and who other people are, you don't have to give away your peace or prosperity to love them. Whether they're a paying client or someone in line at the grocery store, you don't have to give away your peace or prosperity to love them. You can still keep that for yourself because it's yours, it's your conviction, your vision. And the courage, that's my final word for you ladies, and the courage you took to speak life into that, to make it happen for you, to tell others to get out of your way, right? Like, including yourself. But you don't have to give away your peace or prosperity. You can multiply it, you can spread it out, but it's still yours. So that's what I'll leave you with today. We're going to go into our live discussion. I'm going to end our recording this morning. Um, I'm looking at my hearts. We didn't get to have an actual Valentine's Day connection, conversation. So had to wear my hearts today. But thank you, ladies, for being here with me today. We're going to go into our live discussion and see what kind of positive peer pressure we can get going on. So see you soon.